This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. As I always say, another important show. I want you to share this show. You can find it at freedomwatchusa.org on podcast. You can find it on iTunes. You can find it on Spotify, on Patreon, on Amazon Fire, on Roku, Facebook, everywhere. I want you to get the word out because, see, we tell the truth at Radio America. We don't couch anything. We don't have to kowtow to advertisers. We are our own advertisers. And in that regard, go to freedomwatchusa.org, join our Justice League, sign up for these podcasts, sign up for our newsletters, contribute with tax-deductible contributions. That being said, this is why it's an important show. It's now apparent that Joseph Biden will be the Democrat nominee running against Donald Trump. Now, I don't tell people as chairman of Freedom Watch who to vote for. You can figure out who I vote for. I'm allowed to endorse people. In fact, we're going to have DEMETRICK PENNIE on later in the show, along with Joel Gilbert, to talk about the dream defenders and this racial division which is being created in this country for political purposes, talking about representation of George Zimmerman, talking about my representation of DEMETRICK PENNIE against Louis Farrakhan, Black Lives Matter, New Black Panthers Party, Al Sharpton. He's an African-American policeman in Dallas. In fact, he is running for U.S. Congress, and I do endorse him personally. These are the kinds of brave people that we need. And then, of course, Joel Gilbert, he's the author and producer of the Trayvon hoax. We have lawsuits pending for George Zimmerman on that. A fraudulent witness was presented at trial to try to get George life imprisonment. If he'd been indicted for murder one, he could have got the electric chair with old Sparky in Florida, my home state. So this is really important because, you see, during this political campaign, whether it's Biden or whether it's Bernie Sanders or it's whether any other Democrat candidate, they're trying to create hatred between the races. They're trying to stir that up about hatred between, in particular, black people don't like them. You know, black people, they're trying, whether, black discerning generally candidates or it's understand street level or whether paying someone's a phony. They understand when someone's selling them a bill of goods, and this communism that Bernie Sanders is selling, they know will never come into effect. So they just tune out. So to be able to get that, Sanders has to whip up racial hatred. And that's exactly what Buttigieg tried, what Warren tried. We've sued them both for defaming George Zimmerman as a white supremacist, as someone who's a racist, or someone who engages in gun violence. You know that Zimmerman was acquitted on grounds of self-defense. People tried to kill him with this racial hatred. One person's doing 20 years in prison for shooting at him. So this is something which yours truly and Freedom Watch and in my private practice and Joel Gilbert and DEMETRICK PENNIE, we're trying to head off. Blacks and whites need to come together. We need to live together peacefully and in harmony, and most do, actually. But you've got these radicals out there, not just in that community, but in the Muslim community, in the Jewish left. I'm a Jewish Christian, so I don't mean that in an anti-Semitic sense, but the Jewish left is as dangerous as the radical Muslims in many ways. They're self-hating. Bernie Sanders is an example of that. He's a self-hating Jew who is a communist in the mold of Karl Marx, in the mold of Leon Trotsky, in the mold of George Soros, who, with his dad, took the property away from Jews, going to the gas chambers, collaborating with the Nazis to save their own skin. So these are all really important issues that we're going to discuss today. But let's talk about Biden because, you see, Biden is a criminal. So is his son Hunter. I mean, they took money under the table from the Ukraine. I suspect that the Republican Party has a big dossier on them. But the Republicans never have the guts to do what needs to be done. President Trump sends tweets, but that's as far as it goes. And I love the president, but that's as far as it goes. His attorney general is scared of his shadow, Bill Barr, hasn't held anybody accountable. He's just as bad as former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, despite all the hype. And consequently, yours truly has a lawsuit against Biden in Palm Beach County, Florida. Biden and his campaign, when I criticized him, when I said we were going to bring citizens' grand juries to have him indicted, to later try him, to fry him peacefully and legally, to have him sentenced. Hopefully the president will carry out the sentences. If not, we'll find a way peacefully and legally to do it for this Ukrainian bribery scandal, which is serious, very, very serious. We also have a lawsuit. I, Larry Klayman, personally, because he intervened when I broadcast this on Radio America, that we were going to do the citizens' grand juries, and he had all of our YouTube channels removed. Everything I've ever done over the years, over the last 10 to 25 years, were removed from YouTube. I then went to the lawyers of Google, you try him to from YouTube. You don't put us back on, I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to sue the Bidens. I'll put you all in the same lawsuit, and you can fry together. And of course, the lawyers for Google and YouTube convinced them to put our YouTubes back on. And who are those lawyers? Not coincidentally, Williams and Conley, who I fought against for 25 years. They represent the Clintons. They're one of the Democratic hack law firms that represents these kinds of people. But we need to hold Biden accountable. Bill Barr is not going to hold Biden accountable. Bill Barr is not going to do anything other than to protect his own skin. And that's something which we, the American people, must do. And then there's a controversy this week, which is very interesting, because Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who I detest, he's one of the Jewish left. And again, I'm a Jewish Christian, so I can say this. These people are very destructive. He reeks with hatred. He reeks with just disdain. He's a dishonest individual. He's a disgusting individual. But he attacked two Supreme Court justices over their pro-life views. And I'm not even sure Kavanaugh, one that was attacked, is any more pro-life. I mean, he's run for the hills as predicted. He's a political hack judge. And I agree with Schumer in that regard. You know, the Democrats have threatened to have him impeached to dig up more stuff about the women, which undoubtedly would be untrue, but that doesn't really matter. These people run for the hills. These judges are establishment people. They can't take the heat, and they do react. But here's one thing, is that Schumer's criticism, as extreme as it is, and some people took it as threats, it drew the Chief Justice out of the closet, John Roberts, to come back and criticize Schumer. But it's time that people are critical of these federal judges, and I'm the only one that does it, because other lawyers are scared to be critical. They're afraid of retaliation. But they are. Most of them, when these political cases, are political hacks. Now, maybe you might get a reasoned decision if two parties are equal, there's no politics, there's no governmental interest in a matter, but that's extremely rare these days. And we choose these federal judges on the basis of political patronage, as I've said many times, political campaign contributions from big law firms. Look at the law firm of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Wilmer Hale. They've got two judges on the bench right now, Democrat and Republican. And they contribute a lot of money to get those judges on the bench. The judges themselves contributed a lot of money. Randolph Moss, who made a decision this week, which was typically politicized, and others are on the bench. Dabney Freeman, another one that they got on the bench. So, you know, the system is corrupt to the core. And without honest judges, intellectually honest, and you got to believe that some judges probably even take bribes. You don't catch it. The FBI doesn't look into it because they need these judges for convictions. Is that without honest judges on the bench, intellectual and otherwise, the American people are left exposed to the tyranny of the other two branches of government and ourselves. Judges are our most important public servants, but to be candid, there are worse public servants on the federal bench because they are by and large political hacks. And that's just a reality. So we need a constitutional convention. We need a third continental Congress, excuse me. I'm going to hold one in Philadelphia later this year with experts, and we're going to have to figure out how we clean up the intellectual and other corruption on the federal bench. I'm filing more cases in state courts now because the judges are accountable to the people. That's not perfect either, but it's a better system than these appointments. And once they get these appointments, they think they're holier than thou, and they think they can do whatever they want, that they're above the law, that no one can touch them. The Judiciary Committee in the House never, ever tries to impeach a congressman. The last person impeached, as I said, one of the last, was Alice E. Hastings in Miami for taking bribes. And then he ran for Congress, won, and has been there ever since. So these are the kinds of things that we need to address. And then finally, look at the situation in Israel today. They are still having a hard time forming a third government, although the Likud party of Netanyahu got more seats. And at the same time that that's happening, you have these groups like Dream Defenders that we're going to talk about endorsing Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has attacked Netanyahu. He's attacked Israel. I wouldn't even call him the Jewish left because he's not really a Jew at all. He's a traitor to the Jewish cause. That's what he is. But you've got the Jewish left in Israel, which is equally as destructive as Bernie Sanders, that's destabilizing that country. And I'll tell you something, without a strong U.S.-Israeli alliance, and we are from the same heritage, the Judeo-Christian heritage. Without Israel, we don't exist. Without us, Israel does not exist. We're mutually dependent. So this is important. I want to understand how these groups, I want you to understand, are out there trying to destroy Judeo-Christian values, the state of Israel and the United States. And we're going to be talking about that in the second and third segments with DEMETRICK, PENNIE, and with Joel Gilbert. In the meantime, I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org. I want you to contribute to our cause. We are the mouse that roared. My former group's worth, anywhere between 110 and 120 million dollars. I left them with 20 in the bank, and you can do a lot of good boosting your fundraising with that. But we're small, and we need your help because I'm doing today at Freedom Watch what I used to do at Judicial Watch: hard-hitting cases, real lawsuits with real clients, and we need your support. I'll be right back with DEMETRICK, PENNIE, and Joel Gilbert. Listen carefully because this country is in a crisis.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm back with two American patriots, my friends, my colleagues, DEMETRICK, PENNIE, and Joel Gilbert. DEMETRICK is a policeman in Dallas, Texas. He experienced the massacre that occurred several years ago. We have sued Louis Farrakhan, Black Lives Matter, New Black Panthers Party, Al Sharpton, and others. Those cases, were going through the courts, and judges basically cut them off, dismissed them because they were scared of these cases, but we're still pursuing these objectives. And DEMETRICK, PENNIE has lawsuits himself against the Dallas Morning News where he was defamed, where I'm representing him with a local counsel. He's a very brave man. He's running for the U.S. Congress in the Dallas area. He can talk to you about that. I support him. I endorse him personally because we need more people like DEMETRICK that are unafraid. He's been called every name. He's been threatened. He stood up and he did it. I'm a Jewish Christian and I go up against the Jewish left. DEMETRICK's African American. He goes up against the radical left in the African American community. And this doesn't make you popular in those communities, but he's doing what he thinks is right. And then I have Joel Gilbert, who's a great Hollywood filmmaker and writer. He has just produced and written a film called The Trayvon Hoax, as well as a book that goes along with it. What he uncovered gave rise to a new lawsuit that was filed by George Zimmerman for the presentation of a fraudulent witness during his trial. I've talked about that before. Joel's been on before, where he was acquitted on grounds of self-defense. And that didn't stop anybody. These radicals on the left, African-American, radical white radicals, others have been attacking George and calling him a murderer and whipping up violence to the point where someone actually shot at him and tried to kill him. That person's now doing 20 years in a Florida prison. And we have now a situation where it doesn't stop. Ever since we brought these lawsuits for George Zimmerman, and then Joel brought one because this group called the Dream Defenders intervened at the Coral Gables Cinema, where he was going to do a press conference about his new film and his new book, and they scared off Coral Gables. We have a lawsuit on that. But here's the development, which I want to talk about. And I want Joel first to take the lead here in explaining who the Dream Defenders is, and then I want DEMETRICK to comment. DEMETRICK's actually written a doctoral thesis. It's Dr. DEMETRICK PENNIE from Texas Tech, home of Patrick Mahomes, I might add, another great person. And this Dreams Defenders has been attacking Joel and me, and they're whipping up violence, and they just endorsed Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders welcomes that endorsement, just like he welcomes the endorsement of Ilham Omar, who he calls one of the greatest Americans alive, and Rashida Tlaib and Linda Sarsour, vehement anti-Semites, radical Muslims. These are the people that are surrounding themselves with Bernie Sanders. But, it's not even a question of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders represents a so-called movement, a movement towards communism, anarchy, a movement towards taking this country over and basically destroying everything our founding fathers stood for. So I want to put it in context, because these are the kinds of groups that support Sanders, and these are the kinds of groups that Sanders supports. So Joel, tell us about the Dream Defenders, and then let's take it from there with DEMETRICK.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me. The Dream Defenders was a group that started in Florida as a direct result immediately after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the 2013 trial. And then the Black Lives Matter really was formed out of that. It really comes from the Dream Defenders concept. Andrew Gillum at the time, 2013, he bragged about how he was sneaking food to the Dream Defenders after they had taken over the state capitol building. And when you look at the agenda of the Dream Defenders, which is just like the Black Lives Matter agenda, on their website, they call for transgenderism, globalism, revolution, end of corporations. It's the same thing straight out of the 1960s white liberal revolutionary movements like the SDS. It's a copy. And what they've done is they've simply manipulated and tricked black youth and minority youth, for the most part, into joining this movement under the guise that this is the path to civil rights. This is the path to equality, is essentially communism. And these people have been manipulated essentially by exacerbating cases like the Zimmerman case, where George Zimmerman, as you've chronicled, was exonerated by the local police. And only after they came up with this fake witness, they tried to get him arrested and put in jail for life, which eventually failed. Part of the Dream Defenders was founded with a Palestinian terror group called the People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine. It's a Marxist terror group.
We're going to pick this up on the other side of the break, okay? We only have 10 seconds. So we'll be right back with Joel Gilbert and DEMETRICK PENNIE. Stay tuned. This is really, really important.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
We're back with Joel Gilbert and DEMETRICK PENNIE. Joel, tee it up. Let's finish off with the background of the Dream Defenders and their ties to Palestinian terrorists, their hatred of police, their hatred of law and order, their anarchistic views, notwithstanding their ultra-leftist communist leanings.
Right. So this is a straight copy from the late 60s radical terror groups that they've simply copied into modern times and manipulated black youth into joining it, thinking that this is somehow a path to civil rights. There are people from the 60s that actually run this thing. And Bernie's supporters, this guy, several of his leaders are from the Dream Defenders. He endorses them on his website, and that's part of what led to his recent downfall, because the Democrats don't want people to openly talk about socialism and revolution. They want this thing, what I call stealth socialism, which was Obama's method. He'll just talk about helping families and helping people, but really he executes a radical agenda once he takes power. So Bernie was letting the cat out of the bag when he was running around with Dream Defenders and talking about revolution. They don't want him to do that. They want to keep that on the down low. So the Dream Defenders led to the Black Lives Matter, which led to this thing called the Ferguson effect, 33% rise in homicides in black communities, urban America, over the past 6, 7, 8 years, all based on a hoax of this Trayvon Martin case.
DEMETRICK, you are an expert in black liberation ideology and activism. Okay, you wrote a thesis on it. These people want a separate country. They don't want to be part of the rest of the country, people in the Dream Defenders and others. They view whites as inferior to blacks, and obviously we have the Ku Klux Klan on the white side that has the same view. They're very similar. They're two sides of the same coin. Tell us about that.
To these radicalized ideologies, right? So I am a doctor of education. I did do my thesis on essentially mitigating the outcomes of shooting attacks on college campuses. And what threw me in the middle of my research, while I was researching these radicalized groups, that threw me into identifying Black Lives Matter because of their efforts on the college campus, to try to radicalize young black African-American youth, to get them involved in this radicalized movement to attack police. Basically these are anarchist ideologies, right? And Joel was correct in pointing out how they were they were using this pro-Palestinian PLO ideology and trying to link it in with the Black Lives Matter movement so that they can further that radicalized agenda. As a result of that behavior, we had these groups popping up across the country from Ferguson to Baltimore, and that led to Dallas. When it got to Dallas, we had 5 police officers killed in a shooting attack. 2 of the officers, by which were really good friends of mine. Me being an advocate for law enforcement, being the president of the Dallas Fallen Officer Foundation, I then went on a crusade. And my crusade was to point out how these radicalized groups were trying to manipulate the black community and manipulate young black males mainly to target police. Now, as someone who's an advocate for the community, who's an advocate for the police, that's the last thing I want is for young black people to be putting themselves in harm's way as it relates to dealing with police interactions. So what you end up happening with this radicalized ideology was it was proliferating like never before. And I'm glad that Larry Klayman got behind me in filing the lawsuit against Black Lives Matter, and because we were able to stop the movement in its tracks. Our advocacy led to us interacting with other police officers across the country who was being attacked, and we encouraged them to do the same. So as you noticed, there was lawsuits popping up across the country against this movement, and these lawsuits were all about breaking that agenda. It was all about breaking it apart, and we were successful in being able to do that. In 2017, I followed up with another lawsuit, and that lawsuit was against Facebook, Google, and Twitter. And in that lawsuit, what I was doing was I was pointing out how these social media sites were allowing these radicalized ideologies, these ideologies that were influenced by the PLO, which I completely believe led to the shooting attack in Dallas. It was linked to all these black nationalist groups who were followers of the PLO. And in fact, when we got to court, their attorneys admitted, the Facebook, Google, and Twitter, their attorneys admitted that they knew that their platforms were being used by these radicals to target police, to incite violence, to create terrorism in the United States. But the courts gave them a pass.
That's what I was talking about in the first part of the show. These judges are scared of these cases, not only for their own personal safety, because it could be trained against them, God forbid, but also they don't want to rock the boat because they want higher appointments, particularly in the federal system. And, everybody today, if you do anything, is called a racist. And DEMETRICK, you were called all kinds of names, and you were threatened.
Of course.
I remember that.
Of course.
And, and I am, and so is Joel. And this is the reality today, is that you have to not be afraid. We have to break this cycle of trying to whip up hatred between the races, religions, colors, and creeds.
Larry, I've taken it a step further. Because, yes, we do need to fight. We need to fight through the courts. But we know that the courts aren't going to work for us. So what I've decided to do is do it from the legislature. I know that in order to be able to deal with these radicalized ideologies, and we know what they try to do is they try to obfuscate that whole radicalized agenda as being a part of First Amendment. Well, we have to make sure that you have elected leaders in office that can push back on that type of behavior. And that's why I'm running for Congress.
Well, yes, and that's why I endorse you, because you're a brave person. Now, DEMETRICK, it's very fortunate. I have a coalition of the Jewish right that Joel supports and other conservative, libertarian people of faith, Jewish people, which don't represent the Jewish people. The left Jewish doesn't represent the Jewish people as a whole. You're doing it from the inside as an African American, and you're very influential. And we see many people flocking to President Trump these days because they see the BS. African Americans understand what it's like at street level. You can't pull the wool over their eyes, okay? But the biggest problem is, are whites who run away from this. You just call them a racist and they run for the exits. And maybe if you're in Congress, I believe you can do this. You can unite everybody and get them to focus on this issue, because we don't want to have, a even stepped up race war beyond what we've already got today. It's very destructive of this country.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir.
And DEMETRICK, before we move on, tell them where they can go to support your campaign, because if we had a DEMETRICK PENNIE in the U.S. Congress, he'd be the best and most courageous congressman of all.
That's right. That's right. And I'm running under my nickname, which is Trey Pennie, Dr. Trey Pennie. So you'll see me on the ballot as Trey Pennie. But you can learn more about me at pennieforcongress.com, PENNIE for Congress.com. Look, I need your donations. I need you to support this agenda that we're trying to push forward for change in this country. If we don't get real leaders in office that are willing to fight the hard battles, you're going to continue with the status quo that's going to subject us to unnecessary, unprecedented harm to this nation.
Well, that's great. And Joel, I want you to talk about DEMETRICK too. I know you've given him some good advice on some things with regard to that. I have too. But also talk about where the Zimmerman case is going and how we're putting a full court press on to squeeze out the truth and squeeze out justice from these despicable individuals that we've had to sue.
Okay. Well, first of all, DEMETRICK is running in Dallas 30, and he's running against an establishment Democrat. I think it's Eddie Johnson. She's over 85 years old, I believe. She's been up in Congress forever, and she's just typical of the Democrat establishment that did reach out to a number of black politicians and kind of suck them into this agenda over the years. And I think DEMETRICK definitely represents the new wave of the future, where black Americans are going to get their own agenda that's different from the Democrat Party's agenda for them. So I'm very supportive of DEMETRICK and proud of what he's doing, and I think you'll see him do very well as the months continue here against his opponent. As regards to the Zimmerman case, you have filed that case based on a lot of information that came out in my film and book, and you've also got a case, of course, against Little Petey Buttigieg and Warren, who in their flailing and failing campaigns tried to defame, as you wrote in the lawsuit, George Zimmerman, calling him out as some kind of white supremacist and racist, just to try to pander to the fears of black voters, to remind them somehow of this case that was all based on a hoax. I think that case has a fantastic chance to really expose that the entire basis of the modern era of racial division, even fake news, kind of started in 2012, and now we know fake witnesses, like we had in the Kavanaugh case, like we had in the impeachment, the fake whistleblower. If you can really debunk and expose the people, the judicial system, how corrupt it was, how the alleged black leaders who were in on this, Al Sharpton, Benjamin Crump, you can expose what they did in this case. I think it has a chance to really put America back on course to show that we are all brothers, and all this division is just made by people who need division for their own political agenda and their own financial benefit.
Well, you know what, Joel, it's not just exposing, okay? And I know you know that, is that we have to really punish them, and they have to be punished by paying up, okay, to the damage they have done to George Zimmerman. And here's a guy who can't go out in public, has to be disguised, gets shot at, constantly vilified. He becomes the whipping boy of not just Buttigieg and Warren. By the way, Warren just dropped out of the race this week.
Yeah.
She didn't last long. Pocahontas, she can go back to her teepee and smoke a peace pipe, I guess.
Yeah.
But you have to hold them accountable so it doesn't happen again. And that's what we're doing, in these lawsuits, because, one thing I always say about my former group, which I started, okay, documents are good, but what do you do with the documents? Okay, you got to bring about justice. And that's what we're seeking to do here in the Zimmerman case. And also your case with regard to Coral Gables Cinema, where you weren't allowed to even have a press conference because Dream Defenders threatened them.
Yeah,
and the mayor got cold feet and he backed off, and then they lied about it. You had a contract, they broke the contract, and you can't even get it out. But who's leading the charge here? Okay, people like DEMETRICK are leading the charge, like you are leading the charge. There are few people who have the guts to stand up to this, and they just roll over.
Right. Well, certainly you talked about how the Coral Gables Art Cinema, this is just a movie theater. I'm showing the movie, having a little press conference, paid for it in advance. It was about $1,000. And less than 24 hours before that, the mayor and the city council called the cinema to cancel it, claiming one of the things they claimed is they were under pressure of protests and people slamming them. And, of course, Dream Defenders had put out on Twitter for people to throw down and show up at this theater. So that's the censorship problem that we've been seeing the last few years, even since the beginning of the Obama administration, and with the high-tech monopoly, that they're trying to censor any opinion or idea that doesn't fit their narrative. So that's why I'm fighting back in court also to get them to pay up.
Well, DEMETRICK and Joel, you're two very brave people. I'm proud to have you as not just my friends, but also my clients. And these are like a lot of my other clients, whether it's Laura Loomer or whether it's Sheriff Joe Arpaio or whether it's Chief Justice Roy Moore or whether it's the families who were killed, who had sons killed at Benghazi and Extortion 17. I can go on and on and on. People should go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, see what we're doing. Go to my private law firm website at larryclayman.com, is that we need to bring about justice peacefully and legally. So let me turn it to you guys. Again, how can they contact you, DEMETRICK, to contribute to your campaign? I endorse you personally. And Joel, how can they get your book and get your video? We got 30 seconds. We'll go into the next segment too. So DEMETRICK, you start first, and then we'll do Joel into the next verdict segment.
Yes, I want to encourage everybody to go to the website at pennieforcongress.com, PENNIE for Congress.com. I need your donations. I need your support in order for us to win this election and change the trajectory of this nation.
We'll be right back with the verdict on Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign up for our podcasts, sign up for our free newsletters, contribute to our cause, our Justice League. You are the superheroes. I'm going to be right back with the verdict.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
It's the verdict, ladies and gentlemen. The verdict is that we, the American people, need to do it for ourselves, we the people, just like we did it in 1776. And we need to rise up. We need to fight the forces of evil. It's worse today than it was even then. I mean, we didn't have communists. King George III was a bad news, but he wasn't a communist, and he wasn't someone sympathetic to terrorism, at least by the Middle Eastern terrorists. So we need to rise up. Now, Joel, I want you to tell people where they can get your film. You need to watch it carefully. And also get your book, because this is a case study in how this country is being manipulated to serve an ultra-left agenda.
Okay, please. It's start at thetrayvonhoax.com, thetrayvonhoax.com. You can live stream the movie. There's also a book version and a DVD you can get on that website. Check out the trailer, all the reviews that are in. And this is, I think, the most monumental case of manipulation of the justice system, then being manipulated and changed to change the country for the worse for those with political agendas. It is up for a Pulitzer Prize, by the way. I did pay the $75 and entered myself, so I am up for a Pulitzer Prize for now for this book and film. And it'll make your head spin. It'll change your life when you see this and see what they did to this country, all by manipulation and lies and fake witnesses. You'll just be amazed.
Well, this is exactly what we need today, Joel. Don't hold your breath on the Pulitzer Prize. We know who controls the Pulitzer Prize, but people should support that. And whether you get it or not, the film and the book speaks for itself. And the two of you are just very, very brave. And that's the verdict, is that we, the American people, need to get up off the couch, as I've said before, put the popcorn, Diet Coke, and beer down. Okay, we need to get to work. You need to forget about media like Fox News, because that may be entertaining. You can watch Hannity every night, and he'll give you a promise that something's going to happen, but it never happens. He's boosting ratings. He's boosting advertising dollars. We need to support people who really are doing something and are realistic about what we face today in society and are not trying to pull the wool over our eyes. We are in a crisis. Not only do we have a push towards socialism and communism, we have a push towards separating this country, towards division, towards pitting the races against each other, to having this country destroyed so these people can take over our country. And that is why we do what we do at Freedom Watch. So I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org, support us, join our Justice League, share this podcast, sign up for it. I want you to support Cliven Bundy, who's in court later this month over a political prosecution, or should I say persecution, which is now being furthered by the Trump Justice Department under Bill Barr. The president isn't even in control of his own Justice Department. Neither is Barr. I don't know what he sits there doing. Maybe fiddling his thumbs or something, or doing patty cakes, but he's not in control of his own department. And, of course, we have these judges who are so politicized or afraid to address issues. So, therefore, our citizens' grand juries are a way to bring about the people's justice, and I want you to support that. And, therefore, go to Freedom Watch, contribute to our cause. We need to hire more people. We need to put on a full court press. We need to do it peacefully and legally, because if we don't do it soon, this country's gone. The popularity of Bernie Sanders, so to speak, the support by Palestinian terrorist-related people, including Dream Defenders, is something which you have to take very seriously. And now that Elizabeth Warren's dropped out of the race, Bernie Sanders grows even stronger. But Bernie Sanders is just the tip of the iceberg of what's out there today. There's an undercurrent on our college campuses among the youth of a push towards communism, to get stuff for free, to not work, to live in their parents' basements. I mean, these people can't even speak most of the time. They do everything by text. So consequently, we need to fight all of this. And I thank DEMETRICK and I thank Joel for what they do. I thank our other clients, and I want to enlist your support. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause, contribute to the Cliven Bundy Defense Fund.org, the Corsi Legal Defense Fund.com, and also contribute to DEMETRICK PENNIE and buy the book and film of Joel Gilbert, because we have the fate of ourselves in our own hands. Until next week, God bless you, God bless your family, God bless America, and God save America. And thank you for listening to us each week, and share this show far and wide. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Here's the thing about new Cherry Vanilla Coke. Though cherry's named first, all the flavors taste just as great. I mean, it could have just as easily been Vanilla Cherry Coke, or it could have been Coke Cherry Vanilla. And since it's two amazing flavors of Coke, it might have been Coke Vanilla Cherry Coke or Cherry Vanilla Coke Coke. Unless you're in France, which would make it Le Coke de la Vanilla de la Cherry de la Crème. New Cherry Vanilla Coke, so good together. And new Cherry Vanilla Coke Zero Sugar, same great taste, zero sugar. Great taste, zero sugar. Great taste, zero sugar. Great taste.